listening to the Non-Del Influencers Podcast, brought to you by First Funding. Join host Matt Coles as he delivers powerful conversations to help non-delegated lenders succeed and scale in today's market.
All right, we are back for another episode of the Non-Del Influencers Podcast. Today, I'm super happy to have Mr. Paul Needels, SVP of Non-Delegated Correspondent with AmeriHome, on the call. Welcome and thank you for your time, Paul. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join here.
Looking forward to it.
So, Paul, let's just dive right in. I know, looking at your background and knowing a little bit about your background, you probably have seen a dramatic shift in the profile of a non-del over the last 4 or 5 years. I know from my seat, it used to be this kind of like, hey, I really want to talk about it, but I don't know if I'm ready to do it, where we're starting to see a lot of people take advantage of it at this point. What are you observing from your side over at AmeriHome?
Yeah, well, it certainly has been evolving. Just backing up kind of macro perspective, it looks to us like non-del's about 4% of the total market. It's been as high as 7%. And it seems to consolidated during the 22, 23 years. But I can see, based on kind of current activity, it probably moving back towards those larger numbers. Yeah. We're seeing a lot of activity of prospects and clients that are historically big brokers that are realizing they're leaving a lot of dollars on the table. Right. Because of the execution, and they're moving into the non-del space. We're seeing, backing up, in 23, we had quite a few clients that went back to brokering, and we had del clients that went to non-del, right, yep, to reduce their expense. And now that shift is going the other way. We've got the brokers coming into the non-del, trying to execute on non-del, and we have non-del's moving up to del. So there's kind of a natural ebb and flow.
You guys have a really good seat for that over at AmeriHome, because I almost call you like the silent assassins of non-del, because from what I know, you don't have a wholesale division, right? And normally with a lot of investors, they kind of say, hey, grow with us from wholesale to non-del to del. Right. And you guys come in with this incredible delegated and non-delegated reputation, but you don't have that wholesale arm that kind of feeds into it. So just take me through a little bit about how you find your clients, or how do your clients find you?
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, we come at this from a correspondent space. We are a correspondent lender. We are not a wholesaler. Yeah. And we have no intentions of doing that. In terms of how do we get our clients, it's working with people like yourself, right? It's largely word of mouth, largely referral, largely relationships. That's really how we're growing. I mean, that's at the core. That's really the main component.
Well, the space that you're in is really interesting, right? It's like, so we get the non-delegated, we get the emerging broker to banker, and they rely a lot on the investor to do a lot of the hand-holding, I guess we'll call it, right? A lot of the fulfillment, doc, CD. Yeah. But really the kind of interesting space where I think you guys fit is you're really, you do offer that service. You do offer that type of full fulfillment service, which is a fantastic avenue. But it's also probably a good place for you to kind of coach people into, hey, let's give the reason why people move into non-del is they want the freedom and the ability to, move quickly. So taking on some of that fulfillment process probably is one of those areas where your team is probably very good at coaching at. Would you agree about that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly if you're talking about, disclosure generation, document prep, things of that nature, yes, we offer those services and facilitate them. We absolutely give a lot of guidance to folks that are trying to migrate up out of wholesale into the non-delegated space. We make the introductions. we set them up with the fulfillment services if that's what they need.
Right.
We have a dedicated team that works with them. We'll do a lot of hand holding for the first dozen transactions to make sure they get the flow and they understand how it works. So
Yeah.
we do a lot of coaching
And
along the way.
when you're sitting there and you're out in front of your lenders, what are some of the telltale signs that they're ready to move from the non-delegated space to the delegated, right? From my seat, I often
From
hear,
non-delegated to delegated?
yeah, non-delegated to delegated, because what I often hear a lot of times is, hey, we're going to run before we're ready to even walk, right? And we're going to go from wholesale to delegated, and then we're like, hold on, let's take a pause. So what do you see, the natural evolution of what you guys do with AmeriHome, and you guys are so good at it. What's the natural way that you say, okay, well, this person may be ready to take that step? What are some of the success signs that you see? What's the common traits, I guess, is what I'm asking here.
Yeah, so, moving from non-delegated to delegated is a massive step.
Right.
Right. They're going to be taking on a substantial liability of labor overhead and also credit exposure, because they're responsible for, meeting the guidelines. And if they make a mistake, they're going to have to buy that loan back and then scratch and dent it. So, moving into delegated comes with a lot of responsibility. So our clients that move from non-delegated to delegated, they tend to be pretty substantial in scale. They have underwriting experience and underwriters in their shop. They tend to be, they probably have a capital markets person, and they're going to be doing bulks and forwards and managing all that's associated with that. So it's a much more sophisticated and bigger shop, and there's higher net worth requirements, higher liquidity requirements. So it's not for everybody.
It's a big move to make, and we just, I always just temper people by like, why don't we try the non-del space for a little while before we figure out what we want to do on the delegated. But I am interested. You hit on something that I saw quite a bit of in 2023 and 2024. The delegated moving back to the non-delegated, right? They're like, hey, we need to get rid of some of this overhead. We got to cut costs somewhere. Typically, maybe underwriting or operations might be the place to cut some costs. Have you found anyone who moved back into that space from Del to non-Del who's like, you know what? It's kind of good here. I kind of like this space. I think we're going to stick here for a little while.
Oh yeah. We absolutely have. The non-Del model is pretty slick because you get all the flexibility, but you don't have the overhead. And you don't have the credit exposure. We rep and warrant that. Yeah. So we have a lot of shops that will not change their model. They love the non-Del model. They have no desire to go Del. They're making a lot of coin, and life is good.
Yeah, we see the same thing on our side. Right? We see these big shops that traditionally the growth goal has always been to move into the delegated. Right, once you hit a certain number, whatever that magic number is for whatever particular lender. Like, hey, we're going to start taking this in-house so we can really benefit. And you're starting to see more and more people go like, you know what, this non-delegated space ain't so bad. Offload some of that credit risk and just take all the benefits that you can for sure. And AmeriHome is a really, really good partner for it. What are you guys working on the non-Del side today? Like, what are the offerings of AmeriHome? If I'm a non-Del customer, what are some of the advantages?
Well, I mean, let me back up one point I wanted to make. We're pretty much agnostic as a company if you're non-Del or Del.
Got it.
All right. Our mission is to support our clients and to help them thrive. If their model is Del, we'll make that happen if they meet the qualifications. If they want to step down to non-Del, same thing. So we're agnostic. We just want the client to thrive, and if they do, we will. In terms of what we bring to the table, we kind of compete on 4 or 5 main kind of aspects. One is relationship, price, product, and service. So those are really the big 4.
Right.
With relationships, we don't care about transactions. We think in terms of multiple years. We're not thinking in terms of months. We want relationships. We're not looking for transactions. This can be a tough business, and problems are going to happen. Our clients are going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes, and we have to help each other, right? So you do that. You can help each other. You can work through those things if you have a relationship and a long-term perspective. If you're short-term and transactional, those things become a challenge. Okay. From a price standpoint, we have amazing execution, right? We're the largest bank-owned correspondent in the country. We got an amazing capital markets group. We can be very sharp on price. We're not going to lead on price, but we want to always be at the front of the front group, consistently, And then product-wise, obviously we're huge in agency and Govy. And we recently rolled out non-QM products. And on the 15th of May, we roll out our AUS Jumbo product.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, a lot of excitement around that.
I did not know you guys were dipping your foot into the non-QM space. That's exciting.
Yeah, we're jumping back in. We were in it when it was portfolio products. Then the banking crisis happened, and our bank pulled the balance sheet back. And so it's taken us a little while to replace that, but we have all the assets are going into securities. So we're excited about it, and we're expecting good things.
A previous guest on this podcast had mentioned about non-del, and I think one of the biggest differences from my seat, right, is a broker versus a non-del. A broker tends to have a lot of relationships, right? 30, sometimes 30, 40, 50 different wholesalers that they could send a loan to, because it's probably as simple as filling out a broker package and kind of chasing that day's rate or that day's product. What I really love what you mentioned, and this has been mentioned a couple of times on this podcast alone, is the relationship, right? As a non-del, as a lender, you do want to work with partners that are going to have your back if something gets squirrely, right? And I would imagine that you've seen your fair share of things go sideways one way or another. And at some point, there's a meeting of the minds to say, okay, how are we going to resolve this? Now, I know it doesn't always happen on the wholesale side, but it does happen on the non-del side. And I know that you have a great team that works really well with their customers on that side of it.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. I mean, there are going to be cases where we're going to make an underwriting mistake and we own it, but we're going to ask for help to try to get out of the pickle. And there's going to be cases where the client's going to make a disclosure mistake. Right. And we're going to try to find a way to help them resolve it without taking a hit. So, and you can't, and it takes a relationship to do that.
So how did you fall into this non-del space? I mean, I've seen your track record. I've looked at your profile before. Like, how did it evolve into you being where you are today, the head of a very successful non-del, great investor? I mean, how did this all come together for you?
You mean for me personally, or for us?
Yeah, as a company? For you. Yeah, for you
personally. Well, I mean, I've been involved in the in pretty much all aspects of banking and mortgage business, going back, prior to Countrywide days. And I had the benefit of working with Steve Kolker, who's our head of sales here. And I was talking to Steve, and Steve mentioned that they were starting up this program, and he'd worked with me previously. And, I had the utmost respect for Steve and the other folks that came over here from Countrywide, and, it made it easy.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a little bit Countrywide light. It's an amazing group of people.
I think the further we get away from Countrywide, being involved in the industry as a competitor, essentially, of Countrywide back in the early 2000s, right? The further we get away, we're like, what a great name recognition, and what a great company it was back in the day, for sure. So kudos to you. What's next with AmeriHome? You got a couple products coming out. Is there any evolution to the non-del that you guys are trying to, specialize, or anything that's going to be rolling out here pretty soon that's going to make it even more attractive as an investor for our non-del partners?
Yeah, I think the products right now are the big thing, and then just expanding our sales footprint.
Right.
We're kind of quiet. We're not. I don't know that we're known so much in the non-del space because we haven't been in the wholesale space.
Right.
We're known as a correspondent lender.
Yeah.
So a big part of our job is to get out and explain, meet prospects and explain what we bring to the table, right? And it's usually not too hard to convince folks once we show them, our execution, and they get to know us.
Yeah.
The one thing that we didn't touch on was the fourth kind of pillar of what we offer, and that's the service side of things.
Okay.
Because with non-del, it's really key. We've got a critical loan. Loans are brutally hard to get a hold of today, right? And it came from a referral partner. There's a closing date. There's people that are ready to move in, and you have to have confidence, right? So the ability to have a high service level, hitting our SLAs, and having great communications is key. And just as important is when things get off track, you can get them back on track. So,
right.
With us, you can talk to an underwriter. We have dedicated account managers that will jump in. It's a flat organization. You can kind of call anybody. So if things get sideways, you can get them on track. So
yeah,
that's really a kind of a core fourth kind of component.
Let's talk about that. And I want to, we've said it a couple of times, right? AmeriHome may not, in my seat, I obviously know you guys very well, but a lot of people that are moving from broker to banker may not know you. You have an incredible sales team. I have a lot of respect for your sales organization. What tools are they using today to get in front of customers? Specifically nitty gritty, like, are they looking for certain people that are like, hey, closing in their own name? Are they just trying to look for, I would imagine they're probably looking for some type of volume. Give me an idea of what they're trying to profile.
Yeah. We're looking for folks that are banking today.
Yeah.
And are, probably doing, at least a dozen deals a month.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have tools that allow us to look at prospects and find and get a pretty good guess about, are they banking or brokering and who they're working with. We're certainly willing to take folks on that are 100% broker today and are just making the transition into banking. That's our emerging banker program.
Right.
But in terms of where our focus is, it's certainly on bringing in clients that are active today and doing steady volume.
Right.
Right.
And then when you look at one of the things that I've been kind of thinking about over the last 6 months or so is trying to figure out, like, a lot of times I do a lot of presentations. I talk to a lot of people about broker to banker. And of course, there's the technical questions about the net worth and all that other stuff. But really what I'm trying to figure out is, what are the common attributes that I see amongst some of the most successful non-del lenders out there, right? The ones that are committed to the platform, and they do it very well, and they consistently have fast purchase times, and they just get it, right?
Yep.
I have a couple, thoughts on that. I wanted to, from your seat, what are you seeing as some of the common attributes as the most successful people that are in that non-del space?
Yeah, a good question. Well, there are certainly serious business people, right? They're not creating a job; they're creating a franchise. That's their mission. That's why they're in the space. That's why they're doing non-delegated. They're trying to build a business. They tend to attract real good people. They tend to have very good centralized processing or processing support, and good lock control. So they're not just letting anybody lock. And so as a result, they have very high submission and lock pull-through rates, probably in the 80 to 100% range. They focus on the number of touches. So they're very focused on making sure that they qualify loans right and that they package them correctly, and they minimize the number of touches, and that just accelerates the entire process and reduces risk and cost. So if they're doing all those things, it cycles. It's an efficient machine.
I love that. I didn't think about that number of touches, right? But it's like, coming from my past experience, I could never figure out why there's just some shops that, no matter how much you try to do, there's always going to be 9 to 11 touches per file. And then there's the ones you go to and you're like, it's 2 to 3, right?
Exactly.
Or sometimes even 1, right? And it just, what is the difference? And I think the seriousness of of how they attack their business. And I think that someone who's laser focused on their branding and somebody who's laser focused on the customer experience thrives in the non-del space.
Right. Well, really, that's what you're getting, right? Because, of course, you're going to make more money because of the execution, but you're closing in your name, it's your brand, and you have more control over the process.
Yeah, you can't blame XYZ lender that's, on the loan documents for a bad closing experience. It was X, it was this lender. I sent it to this lender. I sent it. No, you're the lender at this point. That customer experience is going to matter. And it is ultimately where I see a lot of my successful non-dels be uber focused on.
Yeah. Your comment a minute ago made me think about a conversation I had with one of our top clients who said his mission is to have 2 touch files.
Right.
So, the top guys have that in their mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember in 2020 when, there was more 2020, 2021, where there was more loans than you could shake a stick at. And everyone was stretched to capacity with how many times we could underwrite a file. I mean, I literally had LOs that were doing 1 touch clear to close because it was a refinance. They knew how simple it was. They knew exactly what to do, how to make it, stack it. Yeah. And then the ones that really struggled and the ones who ultimately got the most frustrated were the ones who needed 6 or 7 touches to get their files through the process, right? So
and that's kind of exacerbated today because the deals are tougher.
Yeah.
Right? There's not a lot of deals out there. Qualifications harder. Affordability is brutal. So the deals are they can be a challenge right now.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, Paul. Well, I can't thank you enough for your time today. I think AmeriHome is a great partner for anyone that's in that non-del space. And really, I also think if you're serious about wanting to go from broker to banker to delegated banker, I can't think of many better investors than AmeriHome to partner up with. So just thank you very much for the opportunity. Shout out to your sales team. I think they're fantastic. I've gotten to know them very well over the last year and a half. They're doing great work. So just very good job by everyone over there. And thank you very much, Paul. Thanks for joining the Non-Del Influencer podcast today.
Well, thank you. And we really appreciate the partnership and all the cooperation.
It's fantastic.
All right. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the Non-Del Influencers podcast, powered by First Funding. For more resources and episodes, visit nondelinfluencers.com. Thanks for tuning in to the Non-Del Influencers podcast, powered by First Funding. For more resources and episodes, visit nondelinfluencers.com.